There's a narrow strip of water on our planet that is so unbelievably important that if it were to close, even for just a day, you'd feel the shockwaves everywhere, in your wallet, at the gas pump, and across the entire global economy. This is the story of the Strait of Hormuz, and we're going to dive into why this tiny choke point holds so much power. Just think about this for a second. The entire modern world, everything, from the fuel in your car to the plastic in your phone, it all depends on stuff moving safely through a few key bottlenecks at sea. So what happens if the most important one on the entire planet suddenly just slams shut? Well, the fallout would be immediate and it would be global.
So how is that even possible? To really get our heads around it, we need to talk about a concept that's absolutely crucial in geopolitics and economics, the choke point. This is really the key to understanding just how vulnerable our interconnected world can be.
I want you to picture the global economy as this giant living organism. Its lifeblood, its trade. Every single day, trillions of dollars worth of goods, raw materials, and energy are pulsing across the oceans through this incredibly complex web of shipping lanes. These are literally the arteries that keep the heart of our civilization beating.
But just like our own bodies, this global network has points of extreme vulnerability. Places where those massive arteries narrow down to a tiny, fragile thread. These are what we call economic choke points, natural bottlenecks where huge amounts of global traffic get squeezed into a precarious little space. And all that concentrated traffic, it creates a huge concentration of risk.
Okay, so we've got the concept down, right? Now let's zoom in on the most famous, and you could argue the most dangerous choke point of them all.
We're heading over to the Persian Gulf, which is home to some of the world's absolute biggest oil and gas producers. We're talking Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Iran, the whole lot. All of this energy, which is headed for markets in Asia, Europe, and North America, has to find its way to the open ocean. And it all has to pass through one spot.
And here's the wild part. There is only one exit, a single gatekeeper standing between all of that energy and the rest of the world, the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow channel is the only way for ships to get from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean.
And just look at how tight this passage really is. You've got Iran to the north and Oman to the south, and at its narrowest point, the shipping lanes are only about 2 miles wide in each direction. That is a ridiculously small target for the hundreds of massive oil tankers. Some of these things are over 300 meters long that have to sail through here every single month.
All right, so that's the geography. Now let's connect the dots to the global economy. Why does this one tiny waterway have so much power over our daily lives?
Okay, here it is. This is the most important number in this entire story, 20%. Roughly 1/5 of the entire world's daily oil, plus about 1/3 of its liquefied natural gas, gets funneled through this one little choke point. That's over 20 million barrels of oil a day. To put that into perspective for you, at today's prices, you're talking well over $1.5 billion worth of crude oil passing through this strait every 24 hours. The sheer scale of it is it's staggering.
And that, right there, is why you always hear energy analysts and military strategists call it the most important energy choke point in the world. It's not just some shipping lane. It's a critical vulnerability sitting right at the heart of the global energy system.
So what happens if that flow of energy stops? Well, the chain reaction would be fast and it would be messy. Shipments would halt, instantly wiping out 20% of the world's oil supply from the sea. The markets would panic. And since demand stays the same, prices for oil and, yep, that means gasoline at the pump, would just skyrocket everywhere. We're talking almost overnight. We've seen little previews of this when tensions flare up, but a full-on closure, that would be an economic shock on a whole different level.
This immense strategic value, of course, brings us to the human element, the geopolitics of it all.
Look, anytime you have a resource this valuable and a choke point this vulnerable, it's just a recipe for tension. The rivalry between Iran on one side and the United States and its Gulf allies like Saudi Arabia on the other means this waterway is basically in a constant state of high alert.
And that's why any little incident in the region, a political threat, a naval skirmish, a seized tanker, it just blows up and makes global headlines. It's not just some local conflict, it's a direct threat to the stability of the world's energy supply. It's also why the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet is permanently parked nearby, with the core mission of making sure this vital artery stays open.
So this brings us to the final, and maybe the most important question. Why does a faraway strait that you might not have even thought about before today actually matter to you?
All right,
Let's just boil it all down. The Strait of Hormuz is the vital artery for a fifth of the world's oil. Its geography makes it incredibly vulnerable. And most importantly, any disruption there doesn't stay there. It travels straight to the global economy and affects the price you pay for pretty much everything, from gas to groceries.
When you really think about it, the story of the Strait of Hormuz is kind of the story of our whole modern interconnected world. It's a powerful reminder of how all this globalization has created incredible efficiency, but also this deep fragility. And it leaves us with a really critical question to think about. In a world that feels more and more unstable, just how secure is a system that's balancing on a handful of geographic knife edges?
Share, like, comment, and subscribe.